Howdy dowdy bug buds, welcome back to yet another storytime video. This time we're actually doing another entry in my Transportation Tales mini-series. I know, I said to take a break from it. But, in my defense, how could I not after the past couple of months I just had? So, I've been going back to the office for a couple of months now, and as you'd expect, this means I've been taking public transport again. And with more trips, that also means I've got more stories to tell, because for some strange reason, these past few months have been incredibly hectic. But not hectic in a good way, more like hectic in a super chaotic, messy way. Now, fair warning, but most of these stories are quite short in comparison to my normal ones. But I just really want to talk about them because they've been living rent-free in my mind and I really need an outlet. Also, I wanted to use this video as an opportunity to test out some of my new sprites, just cause I'm already bored of my old ones. It's nearly been a year, I think? I don't know, it'll depend on when this video comes out, but that's way longer than I expected, and as someone who gets bored of things rather quickly, a sprite update was well overdue. So, in no particular order, let's get into the mayhem. Okie dokie, so the first story we have takes place late at night on some random day that we'll soon find out has some importance. So I was coming back from work, and much like my other stories, I missed the bus and had to wait for like half an hour for the next one. But surprisingly, at this hour, quite a lot of people rocked up, and of these people, there was one big loud guy who's going to be the central person of this story. So he very evidently had quite a lot of grape juice on this particular night. And after he finished drinking his bottle of grape juice, he began kicking the bottle around. That's right, he took a heavy glass bottle and began kicking it around like a football. And to make matters worse, dude was max volume constantly swearing. But not even the haha casual cursing type, rather the salty and angry kind. So everyone just sat there cautious, cause what if the bottle smashed and glass went everywhere? What if it hit someone? What if he started a fight in a fit of rage? But luckily it never escalated to that level. Anyway, after about 5 minutes of that nonsense, a small group of other bro type people arrived at the station and he immediately began talking to them instead. Which was great for us cause it meant we didn't have to worry about glass going everywhere. Anyway, we got on the bus and I thought I was safe. He had some buddies to talk to about his bro sports stuff, so surely I wouldn't have to deal with him. Wrong, cause he ended up sitting right behind me. Which honestly wasn't too much of a problem, originally. But after a couple of minutes, his, let's call it a celery stick, fell down and rolled forward, i.e. right under me. And because I knew he'd ask me either way, I picked it up and gave it to him. And just like that, he used it as an excuse to start chatting with me. So yay, I dug myself into a problem yet again. So he great-tastically began asking some basic stuff, like if I was coming home from work, and then promptly pushed the conversation onto football, which for clarity's sake isn't exactly something I follow or particularly have any interest in. Not that there's anything wrong with liking it, it's just not my cup of Milo, you know? So yeah, he was like, are you gonna watch the big game today? And asked what team I was going for and all that kind of jazz. But each time I tried answering, he was like, I can't hear you, speak up. So after repeating what I said for what felt like the 5th time, he finally heard me. And then he called me boring, lol. He said something along the lines of, you're a guy, right? So how could you not be watching it? And I was so perplexed. I couldn't think of what else to say, so I just muttered, okay, softly. But then he was like, I can't hear you, what did you just say? And because I didn't want things to escalate or for him to get the wrong idea, I was like, sorry, but he still couldn't hear me. Although, luckily for me, this time he just gave up and left to talk to one of the other football fans, so nothing too eventful ended up happening. Eventually I got off, and I thought that'd be the end of the story, but as throwbacks would have it, a dog came out of nowhere and began barking at me. It kept running back and forth yapping non-stop, and because my dog-fearing self couldn't deal with it, I ended up crossing the street, which seemed to do the trick. But the thing that took me by surprise was the fact that I had never seen this dog before. Generally speaking, I pretty much know all the houses in my neighborhood with dogs. That way I know which ones to actively avoid. So imagine my surprise when a massive dog comes barking out of nowhere on an incredibly dark night. Also, as a side note, some other dude was slightly behind me at the time, and he continued walking like it was nothing. Like, imagine that, dude didn't even so much as flinch and couldn't even be bothered looking at the dog. The envy I have for that man. Like, imagine not being terrified of every single dog that comes in my vicinity. Yeah, I'm pathetic. Rightio, so once again, this story takes place late at night. I arrived at the bus stop and after a couple of minutes, a bunch of annoying teenagers arrived. They brought a trolley with them and began riding in it, spinning it around and trying to tip it over. So when I'm saying annoying, I'm talking about these types of people. Anyway, the bus arrived, we got on and they sat all the way at the back. And the entire time they were being super loud, blasting music, loudly talking and straight up screaming at the top of their lungs. And I don't mean that in a haha they're being loud, I mean they were having a competition on who could scream the loudest. Eventually, one of them had to get off, and he began running to the front of the bus. But because the bus driver was stopping so he could get off, the kid went flying and tripped over, nearly hitting his head against the front of the bus. And he did not take it well. He began yelling at the bus driver, telling him he'd sue him and that he'd make his life a living hell. And soon after, all the other teenagers began swearing at him too, so the bus driver screamed back at them and told everyone to get off, including those not associated with him. He said he wasn't going to go anywhere and that everyone would have to wait for the next bus. So I got off along with the other bystanders, but the teenagers wouldn't budge, so the bus driver ended up threatening to call the cops, which seemed to scare them off because they all frustratingly got off. And just like that, the bus driver drove off and we had to wait like half an hour for the next one. So in short, annoying teenagers are annoying, who would have guessed? Also, for clarity, I'm not talking about all teenagers, just these types. Okie dokes, so this one is a messy one. It all started in the late afternoon. I was coming back from a friend meetup and as soon as I was in earshot, I immediately heard a lady go all out on this man. She must have used the F swear word like 50 times in 5 minutes, calling him cheating scum and a disgusting pile of trash. Mind you, her choice of words were justifiably far harsher. So I sat down next to some other lady on one of those nearby benches and waited for the bus to come. But the bus wasn't coming anytime soon, so I sat there listening to their whole conversation, mainly because it was pretty hard not to. Look, when you scream at someone in public, it's difficult to not overhear the details. So this scummy man cheated on his wife with one of her friends. He admitted to the whole thing, by the way. This isn't just some random accusation. And then he had the audacity to be like, please quiet down, others might hear. And she went ballistic. She was like, I don't care who hears, everyone deserves to know what you did. And then promptly was like, screw you, go sleep at your brother's house, trash. And spat on him. Anyway, she kinda just kept repeating swears at him for the remaining duration, until right before the bus came, where she left in a completely different direction. So yeah, I don't feel bad for him at all. But because the story is a messy one, straight after they left, the lady sitting right beside me began swearing like crazy too. She was like, it's been 5 minutes, why do you keep staring at me? And I got emotional whiplash, cause I thought she was talking to me and I didn't even look at her. Turns out she was yelling at an elderly man who didn't even hide that he was staring at her. He justified it by saying, you're just so beautiful, how could I not? Ugh, gross, gag, ill, hated it, it was awful. And obviously she hated it too because she called him a gross creep. So yeah, 'twas quite messy. Rightio. This one is quite short, but the lady spitting on the cheating scum husband remind me of something that happened to me on the bus a couple months back. So I was sitting on the bus, minding my own business, when some random stranger decided to spit on the back of my neck. Vile, disgusting, terrible, awful, I hope that man steps on a Lego. And the worst part is that I didn't even know him. I've never talked to him, I've never even seen him before, but for some reason he decided to spit on the back of my neck, so that man can rot. Also, on that same bus ride, some lady was buying some concert tickets from some unrelated man. I don't actually know what the concert was for, but I knew she was buying one, because she was like, I don't have the money on me at the moment, but I have a friend with a golden tooth I can steal, which I found semi-humorous in a morbid kind of way. I'm pretty sure she was joking, but it was such an odd thing to hear that it made me completely forget the fact I was spat on a couple minutes ago. So up next is a story that takes place early in the morning on a workday. It was pouring raining, like really, really hard, and unfortunately for me, I still had to go in. So I walked by in this heavy rain with my semi-broken umbrella when midway into it, I was stopped by a middle-aged lady. She was checking her mailbox and saw me walk past and wanted to have a little chat, which seemed harmless enough, with the only problem being that I needed to make it to my bus stop in time. But I didn't want to be mean, so I stayed back for a couple of minutes. She told me I looked very young and handsome and wanted to know if I was going in for school, which admittedly felt great, cause it's not every day you get a compliment on your appearance, you know? But I was like, nah, I'm going to work, which she wanted to know more about, and when I explained what I did, she was like, I'm so proud of you for getting an office job. Mind you, this is the first time we've met. And then she started blasting her own son out of nowhere, saying that he was 17 and still unemployed and that she always wanted a son who works in an office, which is a very strange thing to say to someone you just met, especially when said son is still studying. But I told her that her son will be fine and will find his own way eventually, and quickly said my goodbyes cause I had to make it to my bus stop. So I bolted over in the pouring rain and accidentally fell over. But luckily, nothing too serious, just a grazed knee. I got back up and thankfully the bus driver saw me cause he immediately pulled over even though he could have driven off. So early on a cold winter morning, I was waiting at the train station, and as I was, a random man decided to approach me. He quickly took out his phone and asked me to subscribe to his channel. I can't exactly remember what the channel was called or what it was about, but he told me he was doing a giveaway and that to win a prize, all I had to do was subscribe and write a comment down below. But I didn't have any accounts logged in at the time and I didn't really care for the prize. So I was like, soz, I don't have YouTube on my phone. And then he was like, how don't you have YouTube? And all I could do was just shrug. Luckily, he took the hint and moved on to the other strangers. That said, I do respect the hustle. Is it a little shameless? Sure, but I don't blame him. I mean, I'm quite shameless too, so I'd prefer to hold my judgment. Like, the only reason I added the story in the first place was so I could not so subtly be like, subscribe to my channel, so ooh ooh. Okie dokes, so that takes us to the end of this video. I'm now realizing that these stories are actually much longer than I thought they were, and that there are still like 6 other mini stories that have happened just in these past 3 to 4 months, which is surreal to me, cause I didn't expect them to take this much time. Anyway, I'll probably come back to them later on when I make another sequel. I don't know when the next part will be, I'm a very indecisive person, but it'll probably be much further down the line. I mean, this was meant to be a super quick video, and yet it's still about the same length as my other ones. That said, I'm just going to reiterate the last story and remind you to like, subscribe and comment down below. It helps the algorithm apparently, and it's the best way to support the channel. And with that ticked off, stay safe and don't let the bed bugs bite. Love you all, bye bye!